Hey everybody, this is Jim Loughlin, and you are listening to my weekly mixtape with Brian Coburn. It's an awesome show, so check it out.
Welcome to My Weekly Mixtape, a podcast that takes the classic mixtape approach to building a modern playlist. I'm your host, Brian Colburn. Anyone that knows me personally knows I'm a huge fan of live music, and one of my favorite genres to catch live is the jam band scene because it incorporates all of that in-the-moment spontaneity and improvisation and kicks it up to its maximum potential. And tonight on My Weekly Mixtape, I'm honored to welcome Jim Loughlin, percussionist for one of my favorite jam bands on the planet, Moe, to the show. Jim, thank you so much for joining me tonight, man.
All right, on. Thank you for having me. Actual pleasure to be here.
Well, Jim, I'd like to start by asking you the same question I ask all my first-time guests, and that is, what does the word mixtape mean to you?
Man, it reminds me of being, in the early 80s and sitting next to the radio with a cassette ready to go and ready to hit record on the songs that I want, especially if they're doing like countdowns or this week's top 10, all that stuff. I would just sit there and record songs off the radio, and just the mix of those songs was the first mixtapes that I had ever made. It was just straight from the radio, and praying that the DJ would say the name of the song and the band just in case I didn't know what it was so I could find something new.
Awesome. Well, I'd like to first start by talking about the evolution of some Moe songs across the band's 30-plus year history. An example being Spine of a Dog. That track was originally recorded for 1992's Fat Boy and re-recorded for the band's major label debut 1996's No Doy. And then there was a new version that was recorded for 2010's Smash Hits Volume 1 that, in my humble opinion, brings the feel and energy of a live Moe concert into the studio rendition. Can you talk about how some of the band's songs, like Spine, for example, seem to evolve over the years?
It's funny because Spine of the Dog was the first Moe song that really caught my ear when they sent me that album to learn their songs from. So a lot of the progression, especially from a lot of the earlier material, the stuff off of Fat Boy and even Head Seed, it really evolved kind of through having different drummers play the song and different drummers approach the song. When the song was originally written, it was pretty straightforward. There wasn't really any solo breaks in it or anything like that. It was just Ray did this really cool tom beat that, he had rototoms and all this stuff, and it sounded pretty wild, and it wasn't a traditional drum beat. And the bass line, all of that came to sort of create this really unique song. And it was always a great song live, despite being one of our shorter or close to our shortest song. It just the energy behind it. Everybody had always enjoyed that song. I mean, it was the pinball machine song, or, the title was never correct, but everybody had their own way to reference the song. And then I started drumming, and the song evolved a little bit more. I changed the beat a little bit. Everybody sort of settled into their parts, and it really became a cohesive work. When it was recorded for No Doy, it was again another drummer, and they were just sort of trying to catch the song again, with a sort of new, fresh look on it. And it was still a really popular song, even though at that point in time, it was probably 8 years old, something like that, 7, 8 years old. And that, again, it went out great. No Doy was a really big record for the band. It really hooked a lot of people. There's a lot of great songs on that album. And then we became a 5-piece when I came back to the band as a percussionist. And adding the percussion line to it, we added the samba whistle, a small timbali break. Al's solo, I think, was extended, like maybe to twice as long as it had originally been. I can't remember how long the original solo section was, but it was very short. And when I came back into the band and adding all that stuff, and we started playing the song even more, and then it became sort of a jam vehicle as well for anything that was in a similar key or anything like that, like the big spine buster. You can go from a bunch of our songs into and out of spine. You can put it at the beginning, at the end, however you want to do it. So again, the song, it's just a workhorse of a song for us. We use it a lot. We play it often, and that last change for smash hits is pretty much that's how the song has been approached since then. Even now, having Nate on the song, we haven't really changed the approach to the song or anything like that. It's still very, very similar. And when we recorded that one, most of the tracks, when we re-recorded it, I should say, most of the tracks on Smash Hits were done live. We did most of the record is live in studio. There's, a small amount of overdubbing for stuff, vocals and solos. There's a small amount of punch-ins and whatnot, like studio stuff. But most of the basic tracks for that entire record were recorded live because that was kind of the goal. And at that point in time, since then, rather, it's kind of been our goal to capture as much of our live sound in the studio as we possibly can.
And I remember in 2007 on Warts and All Volume 5, you had Spine of a Dog woven through an entire set of songs. It was Spine of a Dog, Mexico, Plane Crash, Spine of a Dog, Yoda Little, Spine of a Dog, and Buster, lasting a touch over an hour and 40 minutes for one set.
Yeah. I mean, the song works like that. It has specific parts to the song, and you can sort of, like I said, just mix it in to a bunch of different stuff, and it fits.
Fits so well, obviously, across the board over the years. Now, going back to that Smash Hits album, being we're talking about it, and it was all done live, two of my three favorite Moe songs of all time are redone on that album, and are what I feel the definitive versions of those songs, being Rebubula and Mexico, because I love hearing the extended jam sequences that were always built into the live show finally being incorporated into studio recordings. Now, one thing I've noticed over my years of being a jam band fan is the discussion over who inherently prefers this live version or this live version of a song over their studio counterparts. And I feel like Smash Hits was the best of both worlds for Moe. In terms of studio versus live recordings, do you have a personal preference?
I don't know. It's really difficult because in the studio, you get the opportunity to do things that you just can't do live. The studio itself is a whole other tool. All the effects, the recording, how specific you can get, how loose you can get. You can really go in any direction that you want to in the studio. And I feel like we've made some great true studio records. I feel like we've made some great live records, and I feel like we've made some great hybrid records. Smash Hits is definitely a hybrid type of album, along with Wormwood and the Conch. A lot of these, like, we did as much as we can to be live in the studio for Smash Hits. We tried to keep as much of it as we can, and we also tried to frame the songs like we would in a live situation as opposed to what the studio recordings of those songs were. When we recorded Smash Hits, also, I was now a part of the band, and there was a lot of percussion heavy stuff in a lot of those songs added. But they made an impact when we played the song live. So we wanted to really represent that, like you said, the evolution of these songs, as well as, what we do with them live. And, if you look at Wormwood and the Conch, we recorded a lot of those basic tracks actually came from shows, like not just live in a studio, but on a stage. And we recorded as much as we could during shows and kept as much of that as we could and put all that together. I feel like in the jam band community, majority of jam band fans would rather listen to live shows than studio work because of the same reason that you said, the open sections of the songs, the improv solos, the segues, all that stuff that's happening. That's the biggest appeal of this genre of music. So, since the early 2000s, I would say that's kind of been a goal of ours, is to try to capture as much of our live show in a studio recording as we can. And if we can't do that, we want to use as much as the studio can offer us to make this record then. Some songs don't always work trying to catch a live recording of, like off of the new records, We Are Not Normal. Pill Vacation is a song that we needed all the studio to record that song. That studio version of that is, it even almost becomes difficult to reproduce live. But that's the direction that song went. And we've done it a couple times live, but then the world fell apart for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's something we'd like to get it back, but it takes, I need, in that song, I'm using triggers, an electronic drum pad, as well as playing the marimba and a couple other things and just bouncing back and forth. So to redo that live is like, I'm a very busy person in a song like that.
It's a musical panic attack.
pretty much. And just the sounds that are in the song and in certain songs that we've recorded over the years, I think instead of an album by album basis, I would actually go by a song by song basis as to which ones I prefer studio versus live.
All right, well, let's do that from the first song. No, I'm just kidding. I want to bring up the Conscious studio recording because on June 11th, 2005, my wife and I were in Portland, Maine for the recording of the album at the State Theater. And that was the show that 3 songs into the set, someone pulled the fire alarm and they evacuated the entire theater into the street.
Yeah, that was a blast.
Very memorable show. But that night I got to see and hear the live, quote unquote, studio recordings for She, Wind It Up, The Road, and The Pit. What was the band's mindset for taking such a unique approach to a studio recording? Because usually in live recordings, and I want to think back to like the kick drum on Wormwood at the beginning of Not Coming Down, you can actually hear some of the crowd noise gated in the kick drum. To me, that was so unique and so memorable. I'd love to know the band's mindset behind this.
Yeah, that was a really cool album to record. It probably is the longest amount of time it's ever taken us to record anything. And it was exactly that. We needed to release material. We had a bunch of new songs and we'd been playing them live, all of them. And we needed to release something because it had been a bit since the last album. And just keeping in mind that whole concept that playing live is not only our strongest suit, it's also majority of at least what we feel our fans want to hear. So what's the best way to release an album that isn't necessarily a live album? Because that's can be a tightrope walk. That's why the live series is called Warts and All, because we're not making any apologies for the mistakes that are on this record. This is just how it is. So you balance that line. You can also go do something like what Rush does and record an entire tour, an entire year's worth of shows, and then whittle through and find the best versions of the songs that you want to release. But that, when you're doing 3-hour shows night after night after night, you end up logging a tremendous amount of material. And to go through that material would be like just a massive headache. And then there would just be a lot involved. Also getting 6 guys to agree that, yes, that song should be on the record, that version. So we decided that we were going to record live, like actually record live. So we built a recording rig, made it so we can actually track an album live while we're playing the concert. And most of it, I would say close to 90% of it is from those 2 Portland shows. We have crowd noises on segues from that album of everybody chanting, "Be on my side, I'll be on your side." Mm-hmm. We took a different weird stuff from the shows, a lot of the ambient room of the theater itself, and just the way the sound traveled just through the theater, just like reverb type of sounds that are just bled into the album throughout the whole thing. And another big thing is you get a lot of adrenaline in you and stuff when you're playing live. So tempos of songs tend to be faster. And then we get in the studio and we sort of slow things down and things, to make everything click and fit. And the tempo is slower or where we really feel that it should be. But we jump on everything live because we're there to have fun and have everybody have fun. So tempos are up and that's capturing Vinny's tempos for all those songs live. All those drum tracks are live on that record. There's no drum overdubs, punches, anything. Like he might have fixed a couple hi-hats, but those are the tracks. And it keeps the tempo up for everything. And then a lot of overdubs were done in the State Theater, or there was another big room that we played so it sounded similar as far as getting the guitar to sound the same between what they had to fix or whatever. But so much of that record was captured live. And it was a great idea. It would be really nice to be able to do something like that again. But like I said, it took months and months to record that record. Maybe like 8 months just to get everything together recording wise. Never mind artwork, like everything else that goes behind releasing a record. So it took a long time. And it's hard to commit that much time we don't always have that timetable to release material. We try to do it as often as we can, and it gets to be a difficult thing. Like we're not an album a year band, or even 2 years generally. We've had stretches of 5 years between records, but we're trying. And like committing to something like that you're committing to a lot of time, you're committing to a lot of work. And we were in a really good advantage at the point because Bill Emmons, who was our monitor engineer at the time, was also our engineer for 2 albums prior to that in the studio. He worked on Dither with us and the album before, I do believe. So he had been with us a long time, and he's an amazing engineer. He got all the sounds that we wanted. He knew how to catch everything, and he let us kind of produce the record. He basically worked with us to release a record that we wanted to release, which was awesome.
They're both fantastic records. And just a small sidebar here, that June 11th, 2005 date, I actually saw you perform twice in one day, because earlier that afternoon you did a show at the Ale House with Mike Loughlin. It was a Loughlin and Loughlin duo show.
That's right.
It was a unique bar because there were swing sets in the bar, and people were we were sitting on swing sets, having a drink, watching your show. And my wife and I still play Carolina Rice and Beans and Can't Stand the Heat all the time. He was such an amazing I miss him and his music so much.
Yeah. Every day, I think about him every day. He was a great man and just a great songwriter. He just really wrote great songs. When I was streaming over COVID, I covered as many as I can get out and like I do a decent job of. And they're all his songs just mean a lot to me. It was difficult the first couple of years after he passed to listen to him. I really couldn't. But now it breaks. Like I hear his voice again. I get to hear his voice. I get to hear the way he thinks. And, I know him. Obviously, he's my brother. I've known him my whole life, and I know him so well. And all the little jokes inside the songs, all the comments and the social comments and the political comments and all that stuff that I just know because I know who he is. And then they're all just so important to me.
Well, I just wanted to, I know it's a tough subject, but I just wanted to tell you that there's still people out there that love his music to this day. And I'm very thankful for his stuff.
That's awesome. Actually, thank you for that. That's just great to hear.
Changing gears here. One of the things I love so much about Moe is the fact that the band utilizes 3 very capable singers who could be the lead singer of just a band by themselves, between Al, Rob, and Chuck, who I should add that I'm also incredibly thrilled beyond words to see Chuck back on the stage after what he's been through the last few years. Oh, it warmed my heart seeing his return. It brought tears to my eyes because he's part of the family, and not seeing him on stage was tough, but the band really got through and did it well. But having him back, there's just no other way.
It's amazing.
In terms of songwriting, Let's take a song like Haze, for example, from What Happened to the La-Las. That was written and originally sang by Al, but then in the studio, Rob recorded the album version, and it's kind of lived that way pretty much ever since. Can you talk about how the songwriting process in Moe takes place and how those kind of decisions are made?
Yeah, Hayes is actually very unique as far as those decisions. Al wrote the song. He wrote pretty much the song completely. When he brought it in, I added the vibraphone line, but he already had this drum machine track underneath it. So that's why, like, when the choruses kick in, I'm playing drum triggers on the pads, just matching Vin, just trying to thicken up the drum sound in the choruses, because Al had this really cool drum loop throughout those parts, throughout the chorus sections of the parts. And I'm like, well, I really like to keep that in there and still have Vin play. So that's sort of how we worked that out. And he, we had played it for live for a while with Al singing. And when we came in to record What Happened to the La-Las, we had actually hired a producer for that record. And it was the first time in a long time that we had worked with an actual producer, someone who we were willing to just give control to and let him make a lot of the decisions, so we didn't become this six-headed monster, pulling it everybody in different ways. And it was difficult. We hadn't done it in a while, and it's as a musician, it's hard when someone tells you, like, yeah, don't play that, play this. Like, it's weird. Don't, and you have to sort of put your trust in this person and say, okay, this is, we're trying to make a really good record, and they know what they're doing, so I would just listen to them. And it was actually his idea to have Rob sing the song. He loved the song, and we had recorded a couple other songs at that point in time, so he had heard everybody sing, and just in his head, Rob's voice just fit the song better, the mood of the song and how it, I don't want to say should sound, but his voice just fit in that slot. He thought that it fit in that slot better. And after recording it and stuff, and, then we decided, well, this is how we're going to play it. We're going to play it with Rob singing it and everything. And it sort of did. After doing it long enough, it clicked. And, Rob does a great job singing the song. And, Al did a great job of just stepping down and being like, yeah, Rob should sing this song. He does a great job of it. And it didn't bother Al. But we have other songs like Akimbo.
Mm-hmm.
When we wrote that, Al's another song that Al wrote most of the song, but Chuck wrote the lyrics. And in rehearsal of writing the song, Chuck sort of just came up with the vocal line, the vocal melody, and a bunch of words. And so it came out that way. This is a song that Al mostly wrote that Chuck is singing. And then Who You Callin' Scared, Rob literally wrote the song for Chuck to sing. Like, as Rob started writing the song on his own, he realized that he'd have a really difficult time playing this bass line and singing this song, and it's high. It was just out of his range for him to be comfortable singing, especially, this was after Rob's recovery from throat cancer. So, he literally came in and was like, these are the words, learn how to sing it. This is the melody that you're going to sing. It's on you. You are singing the song. I'm not even going to try. So it comes about, most things come about in this band through different, very different ways. Not every song is approached the same. Not every song gets written the same. And again, this is just the culmination of a bunch of guys working together for 30 years who now, we don't need a set pattern. If someone has an idea, they can either rely on the other guys to help finish that idea, or they can bring a completed idea in and everybody gets it. And everybody's like, okay, this is my job and this is how we're going to do it. It's still open to suggestions. People still go, what if I did this and all that? And there's no argument. No one comes in like, no, this is, you have to do this. That really doesn't happen. So just about everything is a cumulative effect of us working together.
Well, this is going to be kind of sound like a silly question, but what happened to the La-Las? I've always wondered, Was that title a joke in the mixing of the album? Like they mixed Suck a Lemon and the La-Las wasn't there, and somehow somebody came up and said, dude, what happened to the La-Las?
That's actually exactly how it happened. It's the we were listening back to the end of Suck a Lemon, and John, the producer, was sitting at the board, and we're listening back to it. When we get to the end, and Rob turned around, he's like, "What happened to the La-Las?" And so John was like, "Oh yeah, right," and rewounded it and popped it in. And there was, a moment of laughter because look, it's a weird thing to say, just a weird sentence standing on its own. And then it ended up as the album title. That was like, one of the pinnacle moments of that record. So it ended up being the title of the album.
Love it. Well, one of the songs I want to talk about from that album is a song you wrote, Chromatic Nightmare, which features an incredible vibraphone melody. And I'd love to know from a musical standpoint of writing that song, is that something where you initially write the melody on a vibraphone, or did you write the music first and then come up with the melody like lyrics to a song?
Actually, so the main melody of that song is played in the studio. It's played on a xylophone.
Oh, geez, sorry.
It was written on a marimba, but the vibraphone line in the middle that Chuck and I play together, and then Chuck solos over.
Yeah.
That I had written. It was maybe a year before. I think we were doing a Westwood one, like a national NPR type of radio broadcast. I forget which. It was one of the bigger ones. I forget which one it was. And they came in, and the guy asked. He's like, after we did the show, he asked me. He said, "Can you play just a couple music interludes? We want to use the vibraphone for musical interludes throughout the show, like coming back from commercials and stuff like that." So I was like, sure. And I went in and I just improv'd a handful of little 30-second things. And one of them happened to be that ba da 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 da. And that was the one that stuck in my head. And I just had it in my head for years. So when I was home and I wrote the melody for Chromatic Nightmare, and I brought it in, and we, were working on the song with Mo, and we needed something in the middle. It couldn't just be this weird polka thing. Mm-hmm. So I started playing that line, and Chuck started matching the line with me, and Vin came up with like a 3/4 almost swing or a 6/8 swing kind of beat for it, and everything just clicked. And the chords outline themselves right there. It's just F minor, B minor, really easy. And we opened that section up to let Chuck play over. And it ended up being, really the part of the song that for me stands out on that song, because you have this really bizarre sort of kind of a minory weird circus Tim Burton thing.
Yeah.
That goes into this really nice swing, minor swing feel for Chuck to play over, and he tears it up every time. And then you come back into the weirdness of it. And the thing that surprised me, I wrote the song for maybe the Acid Lemonade test show or something like that. The same show I think Vin wrote Mar de Ma for. And we wanted new songs for the shows, and those guys wanted Vin and I to write a song. So this is what we came up with, and we played it a couple times after the show and stuff like that. And the producer John was, when we sent him all this new stuff, that was one of the songs he picked for the record. And I was like, are you kidding me? Really? Okay. And, we went in and recorded it. And he, like I said, it was originally written on a marimba. I didn't have a marimba on the road at the time. I just had my vibraphone and a xylophone. And I brought my marimba into the studio to record the song and everything. And he's like, no, it's too big sounding. Like, he's like, I want something pokey, like Plinky or whatever. And I was like, I could set the xylophone up and played that with a set of hard mouths. And he's like, that's it. That's the sound. And boom, it all, that was one of the easier songs, despite the melody's difficult to play. I have a tough time with it live. Sometimes it's not easy. But that song came together just incredibly fast. And we had all these huge drums and weird percussion instruments to work in the breakdown. And everything about it just worked out so well. I'm really happy with how that one actually came out in the studio. Like that's a great studio version of a song.
Really, really is. Now, following up on something we talked about earlier, the band's different approaches to recording, and a lot of the songs, like you mentioned, for Wormwood and The Conch were road-tested songs. However, in 2007, for the Sticks and Stones album, you guys rented out a church and cathedral in New England to record, and you came up with songs like Deep This Time and Zed Not Z that were written there, as well as two songs, All Roads Lead to Home and Conviction Song, that were already road tested. But for the most part, that album was all done prior to the Moe fan base hearing it. Was there a reason behind this change of mindset for this one album?
Um, a lot of it was because we had never done that. That was the first time we had ever recorded a record that no one had heard yet. No one had heard any of the songs, like you said, except for the two songs. And it was originally supposed to be a majority acoustic album,
I remember
actually.
that, yeah.
I had bought all these drums, hand drums and stuff for the record, and we sort of geared up. And then we showed up, got in, set up in the church, and started playing. And the stuff that sort of started coming out from us jamming were really more of these kind of Americana rock songs. And they just worked better electric than they did with any kind of acoustic approach. And the I think at least three of those songs, Queen of Everything, Deep This Time, and at least one other song, until so all the music was played and recorded, and we were just titling them Rock Riff Number 1, Rock Riff Number 2, Rock Riff Number 3. And then Al and Rob had just sort of divided up the songs that didn't have titles and didn't have words yet, and they went and wrote the lyrics. And that's where the titles of the songs even came to be. They didn't exist. We pretty much had the songs done from beginning to end before any lyrics were written for any of those.
Wow.
And they went up to their little lofts and weird places we were sleeping and wrote out the lyrics for the songs and came in and did the vocals. And then now all of a sudden the songs had titles and they were done, and it was awesome. That was another like super unique recording experience for us because of that, because we had nothing. We went in with nothing but two songs and came out with an entire album and a solid record. They're not the big jammy songs that we have, and even still live, they don't open up. Zed Not Z opens up a little bit, but most of them are kind of played as they are. We use them as segues. We can get into and out of them easily, but the structures of those songs haven't really changed much in close to 20 years.
Well, while we're on the studio thing, I want to pivot from Moe for a brief second and talk about your 2020 studio album, Below the Surface, which, as a different studio setting, you wrote and recorded all by yourself along with your wife. The opening track, The Brass Ring, is a heavy prog rocker, which gives me this Humphreys, McGee, and Rush vibe while still being unique and original on its own. Personally, just throwing this out into the universe, I feel like it could fit really well in a Moe set coupled up against Bullet.
Oh.
But I'd love to hear about the process of recording that album, because this is, again, you're not doing this with anybody. You're playing everything on this album.
Yeah. It was, so our tour got canceled because of COVID. We were out west, and for the beginning of it, we were kind of keeping ahead of it. And then it caught us in Salt Lake. So we all flew home, and at first, I think like everybody, everyone was like, oh, 2 weeks. Yeah, no problem. This will be over in no time, and this and that. And then it wasn't. And so people started streaming and all this stuff online. And, Rob and Al had started streaming little acoustic shows at their houses and stuff, and giving lessons and anything we could do for money. So I did my first stream, and all I did was just go live on Instagram and improv a bunch of vibraphone stuff over some pre-programmed drum pad beats. And it was pretty cool. You know, it was fun to do, and a lot of people seemed to enjoy it. And a buddy of mine called me the next day and he's like, what are you doing? Like, he's like, are you serious? Do you want to continue to do that? Like, are you going to keep streaming? And I was like, yeah. He's like, okay, look, this is how you have to do it. And he told me everything about how to get my rig up, how I can use Logic and all my input channels and stuff that I have at home and actually stream a show on Facebook and stuff. So I started doing that, and I did that a couple times, and I realized I don't have enough material. You know, the people from Busking Down the House called me, and she was like, "Can you do like 2 hours on Wednesday night?" And I was like, "God, 2 hours? No, I can't. There's no way." So about a month later, I wrote a bunch of songs and started recording this stuff. And about a month later, I got back in touch with them, like, okay, I can do this now. And I had just about enough material to cover 2 hours. And a lot of that was like my brother's songs and a bunch of just acoustic songs, Tom Waits songs, Billy Joel stuff. I was doing whatever I could to fill the time with these little originals. And I just fell in love with recording this stuff that I was doing, which was mainly just for the streams. And then I started getting kind of adept at doing this recording stuff and figuring out what I needed to do and how to get stuff to sound the way I wanted to sound and all that stuff. So I had 4 songs that I thought were really strong. I spent a lot of time recording them, and was the original EP, the first, which has Edwin, the rhythms. I can't remember the name of my Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow, and Down to This. So I had these 4 songs that were really solid, and I got good recordings of them, and I sent them up to Tank Studios to have those guys, because that's where we had recorded the last 2 records with Moe. So I sent them to Ben at Tank Studios. I asked, can you mix these and master them? And they did a great job doing both of those things. And I released it on Bandcamp, and it did fairly well. And that whole time I was still just recording. Like, now I just had all this stuff, and I made a deal with myself. I said, I'm not going to start a new project until I finish the project that I'm working on. And that was probably the biggest thing for me, was to make that a rule, because I, up to that point, have 60 things that I started and never finished, just riffs and hooks and, all this stuff that just never came to be. And by the end of it, I had probably written 20, 25 songs and recorded all of them. So I took all the songs that ended up becoming Below the Surface and really put in a lot of time into mixing and mastering those myself. And one of the biggest things was, after recording the first 4 songs, I realized, like, I need to get better at the guitar, because everybody wants to hear the guitar. Like, no one really wants to hear this metal album with a bunch of vibraphone, because that's just kind of weird. So I sort of needed to, like, offset that. So I put a lot of time in, learned how to play the guitar and record a guitar and make it sound good. And that was a big thing for me. It opened up a lot of doors, and it enabled me to record a lot of different styles of music that I just wouldn't have been able to do without learning how to play. And then the album was basically born of all that. It's a reflection of everything that was kind of happening at the time, everything that was going on with COVID, with just the craziness that this country was starting to go through, and then even myself, my own head, and all the craziness that was going on in there at the time. So it was this huge cathartic thing as well for me. And throughout the recording the thing, my wife Brenda just, she'd come down and hang out for a bit, and so she's just noticing all these little things, and she started to just record her own stuff on her iPad, and kind of taught herself sort of how to produce a song and how to make a song work. So she just kept coming down in the beginning, giving these little, she'd just say like one little thing, and I'm like, yeah, and she'd go back upstairs, and then I'd do it, and I'd be like, oh my God, that worked great, and then she's giving me like little tips on, you need to sing melodies, not like, because I was doing all this like kind of monotone Les Claypool kind of vocal stuff, And she's, if you look, take this note and sing it up here, and take this one and go down and do this, and then all that started working. I'm like, holy cow, by the time I had finished actually putting together those songs to release it, and I'm getting ready to post it on Bandcamp and to get it streaming, and I realized like she produced half of this record. I just kind of without even trying. So it was wild. It was so much fun to record, and she has enough songs to release an album on her own now out of all of it, and it's crazy. But it was a
Awesome.
blast.
Well, I know the Mo.rons listening to this episode are thinking to themselves, you guys have gone a long time and you're not talking about the live music. So let's get into that for a little bit.
You got it.
With 13 studio albums to pull from and taking into account the fact that the band opens up songs into extended jams during a live performance, how does the band decide each and every night what songs are going to make the cut? Because I'm sure if you asked 10 different Mo fans what their idea of a killer Mo show would be, you're getting 10 different answers.
Oh, absolutely. So right now the three main set list writers are Vin, Rob, and Al. So we have a master song list, obviously. That's everything we've ever done, including every cover we've ever done, every original we've ever done. None of them are really crossed off, but some of them, don't get used anymore, really. To sort of, and right now we're unfortunately dealing with a cut down working list because Nate is learning as many songs as he possibly can and to get comfortable on them, and because we have a catalog that goes back 30 years, so
Right.
there's so much stuff. There are songs that he's never heard that aren't on albums, that aren't, you have to dig through live shows to find, and all this stuff, and I mean, he does an amazing job, and he doesn't want to just sort of be like, yeah, I kind of got it, let's do it, because it's just not doing justice to the material, and that's first and foremost what needs to happen. You need to do justice to the material. You can't just throw a song out there just because we haven't done it in a while, and it'll just sound like crap, and no one is going to like that. So the things that are always taken into account are basically, obviously, the flow of the show, how you want a show to sort of go from beginning to end, where you want your peaks to be, where you want your kind of not lulls, but the softer sections of the shows. You need to build in little rests because everybody can't. We're too old to play it up tempo for 3 hours these days. So you got to sort of write those in it. And so you have to pay attention to the keys the songs are in, as well as the tempo and the feel of these songs. You can't be jumping around tempo wise. Some time signature changes to other ones are difficult. Like it's hard to go from a song in 4 to a song in 7. Like trying to segue into Ghost of Ralph's Mom it's next to impossible. The switch is just too fast, and we've tried it and failed on a couple of occasions. It's worked on a couple of occasions, but overall it's probably not the best idea. And then keys. You don't want to have these weird cross keys or have like a dissonance of going from one song to another. We create tension, but it doesn't want to be this fumble through of dissonance where nobody's really at the same place at the same time. We kind of want to all move together from one point to another. So if it's an easier, we try to make the key changes sort of as basic as possible. Relative majors, switch between relative keys or parallel keys is usually the easiest way to go. And all that's taken in consideration when they write these set lists. Sometimes they take in consider, if we're playing in DC, we're probably going to play Kyle's song, things like that. If we know certain people are coming to shows, we'll play songs for them, or if we get requests that mean something to some people.
And you play New York City and like Canada, right?
Wait, you're right. That's the one song New York City is the one song that has been played in odd places, and like someone will write it, and then after the show will be like, why did we play? What was this? Was there a reason? But we try to do like funny shit like that, and but mostly we want to make the most kind of coherent and enjoyable song And the set lists are going to get more diverse. I know right now, some people are slightly bummed that we have such a short working list because they've, had decades of us working off this, 100 plus, 150 plus song list that just doesn't exist. I mean, it exists. We just don't have everything down again. Chuck needs to get back. He's relearning songs like left and right. I mean, the guy is breaking his ass. It's amazing, amazing what he has accomplished to this point. And it's for Nate, he just has to learn the songs. For Chuck, he has to relearn songs, and he has to relearn how to play them because it's not the same for him as it used to be. His hands just do not work the same way yet that they used to. So he has to think of ways to be able to play this song again. And it's going to be different, and we have to work with these differences, and he has to accept the differences and just be able to kind of get through it. And the more times he gets through it, the more comfortable he gets and the better it sounds. So that's kind of what we're going through right now. We got, two guys in the band who have been just working their asses off to get this material up and running as quick as possible. We've defaulted to a bunch of new covers because honestly, covers can sometimes be just, we can throw it together in a sound check and it's good to go. But a lot of our own material, we want it to gel. We want Nate to fit in like really well and Chuck to get comfortable again. So that takes sound check after sound check, just doing the song 8 or 10 times and then going on and doing the rest of the stuff that we have to get that show for that night. But then we'll do that song again the next day a bunch of times. Just keep getting it so it's under people's belts and under people's fingers. And that's where we're at right now as far as everything that we're working and dealing with. And that's the way we need to address live shows for the moment.
Well, as a fan of your live show, one thing that blows me away every single time I see you is how the band musically communicates on stage during a live show. Obviously, you're not going out there and saying, okay, so we're going to jam this part for 74 measures and then go, and the songs just organically unfold as you're playing them. Does that really amount to years of learning each other's musical tells on stage? Because that's not something that you can just get into a room with a bunch of musicians and pull off so effortlessly.
No, it's not. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, we've played with each other for so long. I know exactly when Vin's going to fill. I know almost what he's going to play. I know when Al's bringing a solo up, I know where he's going. I know when he's going to hit the peak. I know when it's going to come back down. The same thing with Chuck. I know when Rob is going to turn a segue into the next song. You just feel it. Like at this point, if it were possible, we could play a show from our basements and not have to see each other. Like it really wouldn't be altogether that difficult. And that's the thing we need Nate to get into. I mean, he's played with us long enough. He knows our stylings. He knows some of our tendencies and habits, but he's not at that point where, it's like almost telecommunication. Like a lot of times we're like, all right, we need a visual cue on this. And if it's from Al or Chuck, I don't need a visual cue. Like I know when they're turning around and looking, like everybody kind of just knows, and that it's come from, and not just playing with each other for this long, but like living with each other for this long and knowing each other for this long. Like I don't just know what these guys are going to do on stage. I know what they do throughout an entire day from when they wake up to when they go to sleep. So there's definitely an innate feeling of just knowing where everything's kind of going. And, there'll be surprises every once in a while, and you kind of hope for them after a while. Like if someone tosses a curveball, you usually see everybody smile on the stage because like, yeah, that was nice. So you kind of want those surprises, but they don't happen all that often unless someone has like just comes up with an idea on the spot. And that happens when we're doing new stuff. Like things will change constantly if it's a new song, constantly on a night to night basis. The solo in Blue Jeans Pizza, like Chuck's cue to get out of it has always been this. He just constantly changes it. Like he has one thing that he plays that's kind of short, but then he does all these teases of the outro,
Mm-hmm.
and that is always flipping around and he's trying to do new stuff with it. So some nights, like, he'll be looking and everyone's like, you haven't actually played the thing yet. So it can be interesting live. Some weird things can definitely happen, but they're usually, like I said, it's usually enjoyable and not like, oh God.
Of course. Well, over the years, you mentioned this earlier, the band has pulled off some epic covers that fit seamlessly into the band's original material. And one of my favorites I want to bring up, just for a selfishly personal reason, was the Roseland Ballroom run of 2005, because I promised one of my closest friends that I would mention this. We went to college together, and the Roseland Ballroom run of 2005 was my wedding present from my buddy Dylan. And that is the one wedding present that my wife says I have never forgotten. I don't know. My aunts and uncles have given me different amounts of money and gifts and I don't remember any of that. I remember the Moe run of 2005 at the Roseland.
Good man.
That weekend, the band broke out a cover of Electric Light Orchestra's Evil Woman. To this day, I feel like that version rivals the original. And now with Nate in the band, I just want to use this moment to kind of suggest that. And maybe to say, hey, if the band wants to throw up that 2005 Roseland Ballroom run on nugs.net, I would not argue that. I would love to see that there.
I'm trying to think of how we were recording at the time. It's very possible that we have the show, like our own copy of the show, a board copy or even a track copy. It's possible. The Roseland shows are always I miss that place so
me
much.
Me too.
Like seeing shows there and playing there. Playing there was a huge thing for me. I grew up right outside of the city, and everybody knew the venue. Like I knew the venue growing up. My father knew the venue from ballroom dancing, and like when he was a kid, he grew up in Manhattan, and from when it was actually a ballroom. And playing there, my friends would come down to those shows from Long Island. My family got to come to the shows. I got to bring my parents to watch me play at the Roseland Ballroom and like all that stuff. It was just a special place for me. And every time we played there, at least to my recollection, it was an amazing show. Some of the best shows we've ever done have been at Roseland Ballroom. I'm trying to think of why we did Evil Woman. That it just seems like there had to be a reason that we picked that song, and I can't for the life of me think of what it is.
But
think
you're right. Al was on his keys that night, and I think he was playing around with them throughout the set a little more than normal, and it just kind of came out of left field. Yeah, it was. But Rob's vocals on it were so goddamn perfect that the rendition just to this day, it's been like my holy grail of I hope they release it at some point.
One of the things that we're actually doing now, especially with the re-release of Tin Cans and Car Tires, the special vinyl re-release that's coming out. Also, just having been around for so long, and we're sort of kind of behind the 8 ball as far as releases have gone. But that's one of the things that we're trying to do is find shows, like older shows and stuff that we have really good releasable recordings of and get them out. Whether it's on Nugs or if we end up printing it to vinyl or just anything like that, we're definitely trying to get a lot of what some people would consider classic shows and actually make them official releases. So that would be a great one to look into, actually, because around that time, like I said, we were recording a lot of stuff live. So I'd have to figure out if we have that show, because that would be cool.
If you do, I promise you, day one buyer right here.
What year was it again? Sorry.
2005.
2005. And that was like the
Thanksgiving weekend.
Thanksgiving weekend, yeah.
Yep. So you talked about this earlier. There are a ton of Moe songs throughout the years that are incorporated into live shows, but never appeared on a studio recording. So off the top of my head, I'm thinking of things like George, Bear Song, Tijuana Donkey Show. Those songs were on the Warts and All series, but then you have tracks like Johnny Lineup that never appeared on even a live release. They're just kind of these live breakouts. Is there a reason for this? And more importantly, do any of these tracks exist in studio form?
Johnny Lineup does not. That has definitely not ever been studio recorded. That was originally, I mean, that song predates myself. That's like the original four-piece song. And it was just kind of, when I came into the band, we started using it sort of as a time filler to a degree because it's mostly solos. The words never change. The song just goes through the same exact cycle. But the interesting part about the song is the solo sections in the song. And there's no order to the solo sections. There's no rules. Whoever jumps on it first is the first soloist. And that starts the whole cycle that's going to happen. And they just play until they're done. And then it'll go back into the lyrics and the melody, and then we'll come back out and someone else will just start playing. It's the only song we don't like have an order of solos or who's going to solo in it or anything. It's one of my favorite songs to solo over, so I try to jump in it as fast as I can in the beginning. But it was always just this kind of like a mellow spot in the show where we get to relax and sort of stretch our legs for a little while. It's not fast. It's easy to play over. We can have guests up to play over it if we want, and they don't have to do anything except solo. And there's a handful of songs that we've used for that over the years, and a lot of those haven't made it onto recordings. Meat has its own recording, but that's a whole different thing. But it was one of those songs that we never thought we'd do a good job of in the studio. And they just, after I had left the band as the drummer, I think it's Mazer plays on that one, but they just happened to be rolling while they were playing the song kind of to warm up or whatever. And it ended up being like 40 something minutes.
46 minutes and 10 seconds.
So it was like, well, why don't we release it as a limited edition CD? And sure. And that's how, Meat came out.
I've always wondered one thing about that one. Can you tell me the story behind Al's lyric?
That song was also actually written before, so I don't really know. I think it's kind of just a tongue-in-cheek joke as to Al was a vegan when he wrote it. So right. That's my biggest guess is it's just a kind of tongue-in-cheek joke by Al to just scream meat into a microphone and have that be the only thing said in an entire song. We used to have a song called 30-06 that was very similar, but that was more along the lines of kind of, it was similar to that Pink Floyd song, Interstellar Overdrive.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Where there really weren't any words. It was just like this kind of chant staring down the barrel of a 30-06. And there was a couple other lines to it. But most of the song was just this dark, open jam. And, when we used to play at Broadway Joe's and had to play from midnight till 3 or 4 in the morning, well, we could do this for 25 minutes. So
the house lost its advantage.
Exactly. Keep the beer flowing, and we're just going to keep playing, and we'll stretch this one out. We'll stretch this one out. We'll stretch this one out, and we have a full show. And a lot of those songs just never kind of dawned on us to record. Never mind, they weren't written for that reason at all.
Yeah, I feel like a song like George would make a perfect studio cut. I've always felt that way. That's one that I really hope the band does come around to on a studio cut for.
Yeah, that would be, some songs it's like that. Like, I'm not exactly sure why we never recorded George. I know it was kind of written at a weird time between albums, and Al sort of had this idea of connecting that, obviously there's parts in George that are in McBain.
Yep.
And sort of he wanted one other song, so it would kind of be a trilogy. None of the songs lyrically or anything having anything to do with each other, but just thematically and musically connected. And the third song has never been done. And, you kind of get lost in these things. Al's just this ridiculously prolific songwriter. So he just keeps moving. He's just does not stop. And he writes and writes and writes and writes. And if we don't do it, he's fine with it because he's going to write 10 more songs, in the next couple months and just keep moving and moving and moving. And a lot of stuff, unfortunately, sort of falls by the wayside because we just don't have time to keep this song as sharp as these other songs. And, we need some kind of reaction. Even if we've only played the song like 3 or 4 times live, there needs to be some type of reaction to it.
Mhm.
If there's not, it's hard to sort of put a lot more into this song and make it like, yeah, we're going to play this all the time. Some songs have built up to that point, like ATL, and some songs just never kind of got there, as it were. They're still around. We still sort of know them. We can bring them back if need be, but there's like a lot of other stuff that we want to accomplish and do. So it's a give and take thing. You kind of sacrifice some things to get some other new stuff.
Is there a song that you consider to be the fan favorite Moe tune?
Wow. Rebubula is huge. We have a bunch of songs that basically we call the 4-day or 4-show rotation songs. So we try to go 3 days at minimum without repeating songs. The 4-day songs are the big songs. So they include Rebubula, Buster, St. Augustine, Mexico, and there's a couple others that I can't think of off the top of my head. But those songs to me are definitely the songs that have nicknames, or the songs that, like, ever since St. Augustine has been written, we constantly hear "Play God is Light," like, or some, Plane Crash, same thing. People are constantly like, "Too fucking high, play too fucking high," and so those are the songs that I mean, the songs that have reached out and grabbed people and brought them to see us. Like, most of those, the 4-day songs, are probably the songs that most people can point to and say, this is the song that hooked me. Like, this is the song that got me into Moe.
Very true.
Yeah, they consider that the perennial or the ultimate Moe song, like what Moe is. For me, it's hard because they're all, I look at them all as like my family of songs. And, there are ones that like I said, there's ones I love to play live more than other ones. There's other ones that I think came out as far better studio recordings than other ones. Some of them you love to hate, or hate to love.
I was just going to bounce off that and say, do you have a personal favorite, even if it's just right now, to play?
It's usually the newer stuff. I'll always, to me, I always like playing, obviously, Time Ed McBain. The songs that I get to solo in are just fun because I get to solo in them. But Skitch and Buffalo is just awesome.
Love
like,
that
it's
one.
A great song. I can't hear it without just remembering. He's writing about the time that we lived there, and it's a song that affects all of us, that we all can relate to, like, really closely. And it's a great song. I mean, from the intro to the verse groove to the solo section, like, all of it is just really, really cool song. And it's a blast to play. I get to play a couple different instruments in it, and the feel of it is just really fun. So that's one of my favorites. Like, a lot of the new ones, Along for the Ride. That's another one that's just so fun to play. And so it's usually the new ones, the fresher ones and stuff that I really enjoy. And any of the ones that I consider are as like a challenge. Jazz Cigarette is like a personal thing for me to have. Play it right and play it well, because I wrote this and I want it to be good. Like,
such a great tune.
So.
Now, it's been a few years since we've had an official moe.down festival, and unfortunately even longer since there's been a snoe.down festival. Is there any chance that we're going to see a return of either of these major Moe festivals at any point in the future?
There's always a chance. I mean, we always want to do them, and we're always trying to figure out how. We really, really want to get moe.down back going again. We need dates. It's hard to find dates for festivals these days, because it seems that everyone has their own specific weekend and everything. And it's hard to go back to Labor Day because ADK has been doing so well, and we have a great time playing there. So it's got to be, we have to find a good date in the summer, and we need a good location. There's some new places in upstate New York that are looking really promising. We'd still use Chucky Cheo and that whole gang, and it'll be somewhere in that area is what we're looking to do. But we definitely want to do it. And Snoe.down again, it's we love it. We love doing it. It's going to happen again. I don't think that we can do these things on a yearly basis. There are things that we have to take advantage of when the opportunity is presented to us and be able to do it and pull it off. The amount of lead up time for stuff like this to ticket sales and announcements and getting the venues ahead of time and all this stuff, making sure the production is good and the on-site teams are good and everything. It's a lot of work. And we've always been basically what you'd consider just a family-owned business. We don't have a ton of muscle behind us. It's always us, and it's always on us to do it, both financially and logistically. So at this point, it's difficult to make commitments to a yearly thing. But anytime that we can bring it back, like I said, any opportunity we have to do it, it will be done. Awesome. Because we love doing them.
And we love going to them. And I will say for Snoe.down, as my bones get older, sleeping in the hotel across the street in Rutland, Vermont from the arena, I'm not going to lie, was a nice perk to have a nice, comfortable bed to sleep in.
I can absolutely relate.
So the last sets of new Moe material came out in 2020 in the form of 2 albums we talked about, This Is Not We Are and Not Normal. Is the band currently working on any new studio material now that Chuck is back in the fold and with Nate there? And maybe can you share some information on when fans can expect a new Moe album?
We have 4 songs that we already have been playing live, 2 Nate songs and 2 Rob songs. All of them are super solid songs, and we're getting the legs on them, and we're getting them to gel and just solidifying them. We will be going into writing sessions coming up, hopefully by the end of the year. We're already kind of booked through till March.
Yep.
And then after that we are reassessing, what we need to do for the next year and stuff. But the goal is to include studio time to start getting stuff recorded. And then the biggest thing is we have to figure out the most effective way to release an album in the music environment today, because it's really difficult. It's hard to spend a boatload of money to go into a studio and do recordings and not know how you're going to recoup any of it, because streaming's not going to do that for us.
Right.
We have to release something physical, and nobody buys CDs. Vinyl is doing pretty good.
I was going to say, I own 4,500 CDs, so I can promise you that if CD sales ever come back, it's because of me.
I wouldn't mind seeing them come back, actually. It was a great way to release a really good sounding physical medium.
Amen.
And not everybody has turntables or even the system to make a turntable sound really good. They're really expensive these days, man. You try to put together like a old 70s hi-fi rig, and you're in deep all of a sudden. You better start buying albums because you just invested a lot of money.
Yep.
So we need to figure out a really good way to release a record, and something that's going to have a lot of push behind it, and we are the source of that push. We have so much social media and stuff at our fingertips, but we're Gen Xers, man. We're not like the slickest social media people. We do what we can and a little bit of what we're told by people who know a lot better than us. But that's going to have to be a really major part of pushing this album. So it is in the forefront of our mind, recording, especially since we have Nate, and anytime you have kind of a new, when I came back into the band, recording was on the front of the list. Like, we need something with the new guy kind of mentality. Right. This is a whole new thing. We need to get something out. So it's definitely on the forefront of our mind, and we're looking at next year to be able to release something at some time next year. But that being said, we also have to learn all our old material and do that at the same time as writing new material. And it's a lot on both ends to do. We're going to do our best. release of new material might get pushed back a little bit, or the amount, or our worksheet won't grow as fast as we want. One or the other is going to happen. We're going to really do our best to hit a happy medium of those two things and have old material and be able to offer up some type of new content next year. That's the goal, at least.
All right. And for my final question, I'm going to do something that might come across easy for me, but I've been painstakingly thinking about this for the last, 2 weeks leading up to this interview. So it might be a tough question for you. But if I had to sum up Moe's musical legacy in 3 songs, it would be Mexico, Four, and Rebubula, giving props to Al, Chuck, and Rob across the board. So, Jim, as a member of Moe, I'd like to pose the same question to you. If you had to sum up the band's musical legacy of 30 plus years in 3 songs, which 3 would you choose and why?
Oh, wow. Well, Spine, really for all the reasons I had mentioned earlier, it was our, first kind of big hit, as it were. It was the first song that people really latched onto off that first record. The other songs were fun and everything, but Spine it hooked, man. It has a great hook. It's catchy. It kind of got us forward. I don't know if I could go by writer or by sort of era. Probably Plane Crash would be the next one. It was probably the first major jam vehicle inside and of itself that we had. When I first came back into the band and we were playing that song, some of Al's solos would hit the 30-minute mark. And you just didn't know what was going to happen in the middle of the solo once it started. Like, it could go literally anywhere. It could turn into another song without trying. It used to go all over the place in the middle, and it was an experience, man. It was like this big, huge thing. And, the song would clock in at that 30, 40-minute area. And it was probably another demarcation that song made was Vin and I just playing together within a song. We trade off a bunch of fills in that song. There's the groove of it and everything with that sort of Latin feel, and it has to lock, and it represented a lot of what was happening at the time. And then lastly, I'd probably pick something off the new record like Skitch and Buffalo. It has that whole kind of looking back after all this time. Lyrically, it references back to the days that we started and everything we went through when we started and all the people we knew back then. And musically, it is such a far cry from what we were back then as to what we actually do now, and how we've grown just as musicians and songwriters and all of that. So that would probably be the three of the bigger songs throughout our career, I would think.
Well, Jim, this has been truly an amazing experience for me. Thank you for many, many, many years of amazing live musical memories for my wife and I. And more importantly, thank you for joining me tonight on My Weekly Mixtape.
Oh, thank you for having me, man. It was a great time being here, and I'm glad I could help. And thank you for coming to all these shows. That's just awesome.
And I'll be coming to many more in the future. Don't you worry about it.
Right on.
And I want to also thank, as always, the Mixtapers for tuning in tonight. Always remember to head to myweeklymixtape.com to hear the full catalog of My Weekly Mixtape episodes. And if you like what you're hearing on the show, you can help me out by either telling a friend, leaving the show a 5-star review wherever you're tuning in, or becoming a Patreon mixtaper at patreon.com/myweeklymixtape. That's all for this week. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, enjoy the tunes.